one dilemma I think sometimes people face, especially when they're kind of just coming out, but maybe even now, like the the struggle of, do I invest or do I pay off debt? And at what ratio should I be doing those two things? Because, you know, and so I'm just kind of curious how you address that question.
Yeah. So I must caveat this by saying I am not a financial advisor. I'm not licensed to give you any specific financial advice. I want no problems with the SEC.
Fair enough.
However, my thoughts on the investing versus debt question, I like to look at the math, looking at the numbers of things, right? So typically, if we're talking about investing in the stock market, on average, you're going to get like an 8% return. 8 to 10% is like what we typically see. A lot of times people have credit cards that have 20%, 30%, stuff like that. So like when you've got these really high interest debts, then it might make sense to pay those off before you focus more on investing. With the caveat that like if you are in a firm or something where you're getting a match on your 401k, like being able to put that money in to get the match might make sense. It also might not. I've actually had situations where clients had so much going on in terms of the debt payments and all of that that was coming out, they were kind of over investing and it was making them go deeper into debt because they didn't have enough money coming into their checking account to cover their expenses, right? It's like it's all a math problem, looking at what's happening, looking at these numbers. I'll say in my own personal experience, my husband and I maxed out our retirement accounts the first year that we were working, the first 2 years maybe. But then when we got into this whole money journey where I wanted to go part time, we couldn't afford it. We're looking at it, and we had $678,000 of debt, and the majority of our student loans were at 6.9 and 7.8%. Right, so it was these huge interest rates, and like I said, you can expect about 8% on average to be your return in the stock market. So we didn't realize that what we were doing with our retirement accounts was basically getting canceled out by the interest that was accruing on all this debt. And so we decided to drop our contributions to just get the match. It was like 3% or so. And then we used the rest of that money to start tackling the debt because our debt was just kind of growing. It wasn't
Right.
like because of the way that the math worked out, the interest rates were about the same. It wasn't, exponentially better to put it into the retirement account versus paying on the debt or vice versa. So that was a decision that we made. But again, it comes down for me to the math of it. So I like to look at like, okay, if I'm getting about 8% in this investment, and I'm paying 30% on, this debt, maybe it makes more sense instead of putting that money into the investment right now to pay on the debt. If it's something where things are kind of a wash, like in our situation, it kind of depends again on your numbers. Like for us, because of the amount of debt we had, our minimum payments were like $3,500 a month. That was a lot of money, like a big chunk of change coming out
Yeah.
every month, and we wanted to not pay that. And so we decided to decrease the retirement contributions to be able to pay that off and decrease the amount that we were having to pay out each month. So that's how I think about that decision. I do think that it is deeply personal. It
Hmm.
is, situational. Like each person might have a different outcome or might have a different situation that makes more sense for them. And so definitely reach out to a financial planner or someone like that who can help you if you need professional help in making that decision.
Absolutely. And and I know, because I know, I've read your story. You and your husband were able to get out of your debt. I think the only debt you really have now is your mortgage, which is fair. Most people do. I'm curious, how long did it take you guys? Like, it sounds like you got really focused and you said, okay, we're gonna do this. You know, how long did it take for you to knock that debt down?
Yeah, it took a little under 6 years, maybe about 5 years, something like that. And a big part of that, honestly, was the pause in the pandemic where interest wasn't accruing, because that was the thing that was really killing us. Like, we had this multiple six-figure debt. We were accruing all this interest, and you make a payment, but like this little bitty portion went to the principal. So being able to make payments where they were all principal only, like really accelerated that. But I think before the pandemic, we were on track for something like 7 or 8 years.